All right, everybody, get ready for the next session. It's time to introduce our next speaker, Kevin Turner. Trust me when I say that Kevin has some eye-opening insights about LinkedIn that nobody ever told you before. He's a LinkedIn superstar who knows this platform inside out. Seriously, he's like a walking LinkedIn encyclopedia. If you think you've heard it all, think again. Kevin is here to reveal some game-changing secrets that will completely revolutionize your LinkedIn game. In his highly anticipated talk on the topic of 4 things nobody ever told you about LinkedIn that will change everything you do here, Kevin will share his insider knowledge and shed light on the untapped opportunities that lie within the platform. Get ready to have your assumptions challenged and your LinkedIn strategy revolutionized. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give Kevin Turner a virtual round of applause as he graces our digital stage. Buckle up and get ready to have your LinkedIn world turned upside down. Take it away, Kevin.
Hello, this is Kevin Turner with TNT Brand Strategist out of Dallas, Texas, and I'm very excited to be here at the Linked Innovators Summit for 2023 and really excited to present to you, to talk with you, to communicate with you about how I see LinkedIn a little differently. And I was an early adopter with LinkedIn. I joined in February of 2005. And I've been fascinated by this site ever since. And I really have enjoyed it at kind of a data level, a database level. And a lot can be answered through that process. And I want to talk to you a little bit about that today. Over the years, I've trained more than 12,000 people on the best practices of the platform, and I've optimized close to 5,000 LinkedIn profiles. I used to present in front of groups of 600 to 1,000 people that were in transition, and it was how do you then kind of pull this system together, they're called LinkedIn, to move them forward to where they want to be. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Over the years, I came to realize that LinkedIn is not a social good site. A lot of people think it is, right? It can be free with a basic account. You can do a lot of things in here. You can network, you can talk with people, but it really isn't a social good site. What LinkedIn is it is a business. Believe it or not, it's a 17 billion plus annual business. And as a matter of fact, the only wildly profitable social platform ever. That's pretty amazing. I mean, you think about Twitter hasn't made any money. It's always been a deficit. I don't think Facebook has made $1 yet. Meta certainly hasn't. The difference is the approach that LinkedIn took, and that was really about who the customer is on the platform. And believe it or not, 65% of that $17 billion annual revenue comes from selling members, you and me, to other members. That 65% comes from the Talent Solutions Recruiter tool and Sales Navigator. That's really LinkedIn's customer. We as members are not the big customer. We're actually the core product of LinkedIn. So it's good to understand that. Tells you why you get the responses you get from LinkedIn, why things happen the way they happen on LinkedIn, because we're technically not the customer. We're the product. And I like people to get a feel for that and understand that. LinkedIn is essentially a database of professional resumes. That's what a LinkedIn profile is. If for nothing better, it is a recap of our professional experience. That's a resume. The difference on LinkedIn is we have a little more ability to add visuals, to add examples, to kind of augment that positioning a little better. And then the other side of that, if you think about it, is we put all this information out there to the public. And by doing that, there's an old expression that sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? So if I were to say I am X, Y, and Z, and I've done A, B, and C, and I've delivered in these same kind of areas, if I'm willing to put it on LinkedIn, more than likely it is true. So there's a believability in that process where in a resume, maybe a little less. So that's why it's become kind of a de facto source for these recruiters, right, who are looking for people to fill positions, and for companies through Sales Navigator who are looking to sell to individuals within companies. And so that's why that's the core customer. That's why everything kind of focuses around there. What is really different on LinkedIn is the platform itself is based on a theory called 6 degrees of separation. Now, I don't know if you know what 6 degrees of separation is. Many people don't, but you may have heard there was a game that started about probably 20 years ago. It was called the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. Kevin Bacon has been in over 300 movies in Hollywood, and you can connect Kevin Bacon to anybody else in the movie business based on other connections that they may have made. And so there's a game, basically, and you play it through there to connect, let's say, Kevin Bacon to John Wayne. They never appeared in the same movie, but they had connectivity throughout. So that's the concept of 6 degrees. And if you simplify it, what it really means is that within 6 handshakes, right, you can meet anybody in the world that you want to meet. That's LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn thought about that and said, hey, that's great. We want to connect the world. We want to have that, but we want to monetize it. So how do you monetize 6 degrees? You cut it off at the 3rd degree. And that is why, as members, we can only see up to our 3rd degree. That allows LinkedIn to sell us to the other 3, or the other 3 to us. And that's where that 65% of that $17 billion comes annually. Pretty smart. I was amazed when really delved in and thought about that process. That has what has made LinkedIn that wildly profitable first-time social platform ever. And maybe going forward, because they were smart enough to acquire the patent for that. And they own it for all social platforms. And that's interesting because they think if other people had bought it before they had, that they might not have been able to do what they were doing. So they secured it, and I love the fact that they've got that. Part of that 6 degree model let's start that over. Part of that 6 degree model is the more first level handshakes that you have, the connections, right? The more of those you have, the less of the other 6 or the other 5 that you need. So technically you could meet anybody in the world within a couple of handshakes based on how many you have at the beginning, right? That first level. So real important to understand that. That is one of the reasons that LinkedIn has cut us off at 30,000 first level connections. Because at 30,000, based on the equation of 6 degrees, we can gain access to somewhere between 25 to 33% of the current LinkedIn database. So LinkedIn really doesn't want us, even at that 30,000 level. And sometimes the closer you get to that 30,000 level, the less the site responds to you in its process. And they don't want to address that. It is probably the number one reason that they brought in followers last couple of years, because they had influencers who thought, you're going to cap me at 30,000. Why am I going to stay on this platform? They said, well, we're going to offer you followers. They're even better, right? And you can have as many as you want. Doesn't matter. Well, followers doesn't break down the 6 degrees of separation revenue equation. It just basically gives you somebody who is following you. You're not really connected to them. So for LinkedIn, it was very smart to do, and that's why they did it. So I find that fascinating that they're always thinking about how do we protect this access, right? Because if we give that away, we can't then sell it. And so good to know in that sense. If we focus our networks, right, and we build those networks very strong, we should be able to gain enough access that we don't have to pay for Recruiter and for Sales Navigator. It's all up to us and how we perform that. And I think that's kind of a neat concept. And I've been able to do it in my own business within LinkedIn to the point where it has paid off, and I haven't had to step into Sales Navigator or Recruiter. I've tried both of them in the past, and I still get enough value with my business account. So wanted you to understand that. I wanted to share with you a Boolean string. And a Boolean string is basically a math equation, right, that we can put into a search box. And it uses connectors. The connectors we're going to use today are OR, capital O, capital R. That's our connector. And what we're going to do is we're going to try to figure out how far our third degree reach is. So that's our network, first, second, and third level, right? How far does that get out? If I had a post and it went crazy, how far could it go? If people are looking for me without paying for tools, how close do they have to be in that reach? And so it's good to know your reach. Really easy to know your first level, right? Those are your connections. It tells you. So this Boolean string, we're going to take basically the letters A, E, I, O. We used to be able to add U and Y, but LinkedIn decreased the amount of connections or connectors in a Boolean string. So we lost U and Y. But what this is going to do is going to give us about an 80% representation of our network who have these letters in their name, right? And it's probably going to be more English-based, right? This would not bring up any of those connections that, let's say, are in kanji or something of that effect. So it's going to be kind of English-based. But it's a good way to kind of determine that. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to enter in the search box, right? We can just click on search, click on people. The first thing it's going to show in this video is the amount of connections that are on LinkedIn. And I think right now it's 922 million plus. There may be more, maybe less. We never really know. But it's a good kind of estimator, right? Then if we then click on the level of connectivity, right? I already know what my first level is. So I'm going to click on my second level. That's going to tell me who is connected to my first level, right? That's going to come out to a different number. And then if I do all three, it's going to tell me my reach. So my reach is the largest potential within my network. So I like looking at that. And I think that's a good thing to understand so that we know what our potential is on LinkedIn to be found or to find. And so, very important, I think, in kind of the knowledge of LinkedIn. It is an incredible platform. It is close to 1 billion members. And sometimes it feels like we are just 1 in 1 billion, which makes sense, right? Sometimes we feel what I call invisible. And that's normal. But how can we take control of that, knowing that LinkedIn is a database, right? Database-based Basically, there's best practices, and there's math, and there's ways of making a database work for you, because that's how LinkedIn monetizes a database for its core customers. So if we think about, if you ran a grocery store, right, and I sent you a product, and that product didn't really fit in any of your categories, you're like, well, I'm not sure what to do with this, so I'm not going to give it the end cap. It's not going to be up by the register. It's not going to be at eye level. That's where my big profit stuff is. I'm probably going to take that product and I'm going to put it all the way in the back of the store. It's going to be on that shelf or shelves, right, that are next to the bathroom where all the dusty, dirty, dented kind of products are, because I can't fit it in a category. Well, when we go in and we build a profile within LinkedIn, if we're not paying attention to what's called market value filters, basically what we're doing is we're putting ourselves on that shelf back by the bathroom that has no category. Well, yeah, LinkedIn never tells you that. LinkedIn makes it so easy to create a profile that looks pretty darn good, but it could be totally dysfunctional with the database. And that's how we become invisible. And that's happening to majority of the people that I've run into, that I've been able to help over the years, is they're not paying attention to these market value filters. LinkedIn puts them in front of us. They just don't tell us what they are and when they're doing this. So I'm going to start up a little video here, and we're going to run through an experience section on my profile. So the first thing we look at in that experience section is going to be title. So title, pretty simple. What position you have. If you start typing in the title, you'll notice a drop-down box appears. If you type in a title and no drop-down box appears, it means that title is not a market value. It's not recognized. LinkedIn doesn't know what it is. LinkedIn cannot AI assign it skills that maybe you didn't put into your content. And nobody using the LinkedIn recruiter or sales navigator using those drop-down titles will be able to find you. So again, making you invisible. So titles really important. Next one down is companies. Companies are interesting in the sense that if you're typing in a company and you see the gray building box, right? Looks like a couple little gray buildings. That means it's not attached to a company page. Keep looking, keep pushing. You'll find one that comes up with a logo. That's the one you want to click on, because that then says you're attached to a company, and LinkedIn can then validate you as being employed as opposed to being connected to the building box, which means you may or may not have been employed, and you become gray data, and they push you down the ranking list. So companies are important. Employment type is important. So if you are full-time, right, you probably have more value than if you are seasonal, which is at the bottom of the list. So as you're typing in that area, you'll notice most people have nothing selected. So LinkedIn puts them at the bottom of the list just to be safe. And then if you select something, you're going to be ranked based on that list. Obviously, full-time being the most valuable to their customers. So we want to make sure, if we can, put full-time in. As we go down there, location. And this is interesting because LinkedIn has updated their location database at least 3 times in the last probably 5 years, just recently in the last probably 3 or 4 months. For me, Dallas, Fort Worth area was the location. And that was what LinkedIn said it was. And then, without telling anybody, they changed it to the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. Well, if I had left mine, I would not be found if somebody was searching for me using the filtering within their system. So you want to go back and relook that one up. Make sure you're using, again, the big net as opposed to a small city. Try to find metroplexes, try to find greater areas, because you're going to find greater opportunity will find you. So outside of that, we have location type. And you think about it, companies right now are pushing to get people back in the office, right? And if you can do that and you can select on site, you're probably going to have a higher degree of being recruited. If you select remote, you're only going to get recruited for those positions that the company knows are going to stay remote forever. So hybrid might be a good choice in between. Obviously, you've got to do an honest selection of that market value filter, but know that they are ranked in how those things are offered. Next one being industry. LinkedIn, about 4 months ago, actually I think it was April, set up the new NIAC code. And that NIAC code now has changed. Mine was fairly simple. It was writing and editing, which I don't think is always the best because I do a bunch of other things. But the and was the symbol and before April. And after April, it became AND. If I left the old one, I couldn't be found by industry. If I embrace the new one, I can be found by that industry. So real important to kind of, again, go back and look these over. Now, I'm going to go all the way down into education because we spend time on education. We spend money on education, whether it's certifications, whether it's higher degrees, we'll spend that time. And if you're not using that drop-down box, then you won't appear as having that certification or degree. So you want to definitely select that. Now, one thing, and I don't like the fact that this is done on upper degrees, right? If you don't put your graduation date, which many people don't because of ageism, if you do not put that graduation date, you will not come up in recruiter searches that require degrees. So be aware of that. Better to be in a search that requires degrees and show up, and then they, maybe a few of them say, I don't like people of that age. That's a different issue, but you're in the search, you're in the results, as opposed to taking it out and being in no results. Be aware of that. Right after that, you'll see skills, and skills are assigned to positions. They're assigned to also your about section now. And skills are another way of doing market value filters. When you're selecting a skill, type slowly and take from the drop-down box. M and A, if you spell out the and, doesn't count, but it does with the symbol. So it's almost the opposite of what that industry code was. So you, again, want to pay attention to what they're presenting and use those appropriately. The reason we have now 5 skills in the About section is to give an overall focus, right? Whereas the skills per position are so that we can get years of skills. So if you have sales experience and you've got it on 5 positions that equal 15 years, you have 15 years of sales experience. As opposed to if you just put sales experience in the About section, I just know you have that, but it could be a month. Or it could be 15 years, I don't know. This is how they're using the data within the system. So always, I think, good to see there. Now, one of the things that LinkedIn looks at is how accurate is your information? And on face value, that's really difficult to understand. But what they've done is they give credit for timely adjustments to your data and also activity, because sometimes we don't want to keep editing our LinkedIn profile because nothing's really changed there, right? But our activity can be the same thing as far as a timing value. And the way LinkedIn looks at it is the more active we are on the site, and active could be participating in audio rooms, live events, commenting, posting, giving reactions, wishing happy birthday, messaging, all those activities tell LinkedIn that the data must be really updated. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here, right? We wouldn't be doing all this stuff if we had inaccurate data. So it must be accurate. So they use that as a level to, again, promote you if you're doing it. So good to understand that. The final thing is, there's science and art to this whole process. You want to be able to look at your LinkedIn profile and set it up to move you forward. Get rid of things that are on there that you don't ever want to do again, right? Look at it in the sense of you don't want to approach this as kind of the Jack and Jill of all trades, right? The end of that phrase is master of none. And nobody hires masters of none unless they're running a convent. Focus, get it right, deliver, show them your achievements, put your proof metrics in there, but set it up to move you forward. When you just dump everything in there, chronological dump, and figure that somebody else on the other side will figure it out, that is not personal branding. That is what I call personal blanding, and you got to avoid it. So that's what I wanted to say today. Hopefully that helped. Love to connect with you. I've got QR codes down there for my LinkedIn, for my newsletter, and for my YouTube channel. Please join in the conversation, enjoy, and I really do appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, and take care. Bye-bye.